right, welcome back to the Built Different podcast, fellas. Good to see y'all again. Another great week. My March Madness bracket was busted last week. I don't know if that was a bad omen of us going through all the fun March activities, but I don't want to talk about basketball for another 11 months. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. Brian, is your bracket as busted as mine?
I'm probably most looking forward to some good old football tonight, Peru versus Venezuela, but we could talk about that another day.
Football. Well, we are very much off topics on that. Jarvis, is your bracket totally busted? Or you're a BYU fan, right? So they've advanced on.
Story of the March Madness right there, BYU.
Dude, I don't want to talk about that. They definitely beat up on our Cyclones in the regular season, and yeah, it was just not a good effort, fellas. I don't know if you're like a believer of like juju, but like that shirt I wore last week, I just have had bad juju with it, and I don't know if it's not going to make it anymore. Like I just need to retire it because I've watched too many games where we've lost in that, and it's just time to move on. But
you gotta wear it inside out.
I could wear it inside out. I didn't think about that. That's actually pretty decent.
Red Sox reverse the curse. Tips.
Just get my rally hat going. That could actually be pretty fun. All right, well, let's get into it. We're gonna have a good time today. I'm very excited because fellas, we're bringing in featured guests. We are incredibly lucky to have someone that's going to be joining in with us. Really just a great conversation. We've been super fortunate to collaborate with this individual really over the last 12 months. He was a speaker at our Horizons conference. I've just appreciated his content he's put out on LinkedIn. I've learned a ton from him, and I think this will be just a great opportunity for us to, I don't know, get out of the way, ask some questions, and really diversify, I think, some of our knowledge and topic around some of that. So we got a couple really good topics that we're going to dive into. And you're probably asking, well, who are we bringing in? Who are we going to talk to? And so that person in particular is Mr. Ted. Ted is someone who is just, man, I don't even know how to like articulate to intro Ted. Just someone who I've been encouraged by, has done some great work in the space of reality capture and drones and photogrammetry and just some really great workflows that, again, I've learned a ton from. I know you guys got to meet him at our user conference in Horizons. He was one of the highest attended breakout sessions, which is super encouraging, just super down to earth. I think anytime you meet someone on LinkedIn or you see their content, you're always like, man, who is this person behind the content? And it was just encouraging to get to meet him in person last year. And Brian and Jarvis, any thoughts to how do we get this guy on?
I'm excited to hear. I think seeing Ted's content, you definitely get the sense that there's no real ulterior motive other than like this dude just loves this. So I think the passion is going to show through that today.
Yeah, well said. Well, let's get him on. Ted, we're going to bring you in, my friend. I hope you like your little player baseball card. I don't know if that's going to be a thing that we're going to do from now on, but great to see you, man. And the setup, I'm digging this yellow chair and this camera angle. Man, you're rocking this little podcast studio here.
You like my accent chair as IKEA, fantastic little store over there. But we gotta get the colors popping. So we got the Wingtra. Actually, back there, this is new. This is a shadow box I made. It's the internals of a Skydio S2 that I crashed a while ago, and so it was just they crash. Yeah, once in a while they crash.
Hey,
but
it almost looked like it almost looked like a virtual background, and then you took a step back, and I was like, wait a second, this is like a real space that you have.
Yeah, I've had this drone in a box. It obviously wasn't going to fly again, so I was like, why don't I turn this into a little piece I can use as wall art? And it actually turned out fantastic. I wish you guys could see it up close, but it's all the little components, and it's actually really interesting to see, what the inside of these things often look like. I'm used to seeing, and people are used to seeing like FPV drones, and it's all pretty much the same in there. All the components are essentially, just a higher order quality level than what you see in a hobby components. But it's really interesting to see how it's the same stuff that we've been flying around for years.
It's crazy.
Just smash.
And it's smash. It's funny how our backgrounds kind of become our personalities a little bit. Like it's almost like a further version of our email signatures. It's like, just your character and personality can kind of be in the backgrounds that you have. I don't know. People give me a hard time for my little IKEA stuff back here too, Ted, but I'm with you, man. That's the way to go.
IKEA all the way.
Love it. Well, we're gonna have some fun. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. One, just just in your intro, it's like, man, I've been encouraged by your work, your content you put out, just helping more people become aware of what's possible. I think maybe even just as like I'm trying to think of a way of like how I could describe the content and work that you do, and just maybe what's kind of first and helpful is like your background, kind of what interested you in this space, and kind of how you got into the work that you're doing at Sky Deploy, which not to be confused with Drone Deploy, but I kind of like the play on names that we went with here. So just curious of like what got you interested in this stuff, and like how, because we're gonna get into it here in just a second with kind of like I called it the anatomy of the virality section or featured kind of segment here. But just how did you get into this stuff? Because I think backgrounds are always kind of interesting to hear a little bit.
I think it was a mixture of timing and just passions. I'm essentially doing my hobby as a career nowadays. So definitely winning on that front. Now there's a lot, it's not all, rainbows and unicorns. It's very different than working at a company or something more corporate, because it all really rests on me. But I started I bought a drone and discovered photogrammetry. And I was instantly hooked. Previous to that, I didn't have any experience in any of this stuff. So it's all self-taught through, trying, breaking, fixing it. And that's like the reoccurring theme. And I do a lot of training now, especially one-on-one training. And this becomes very evident. Like there's really no textbook or course that gets you to where you want to be in today's industry. It's a lot of just trial and error. And that was my story for the last like 8 years. And I'm still doing a lot of that every day. And then what kicked off kind of like the LinkedIn and kind of what the world, or I guess the industry, the few people that are in the industries, it's really rather small compared to other industries. What kicked off all the social media and the content stuff for me was I was making videos for myself, essentially videos that I enjoyed to sort of use as a portfolio piece or just to reminisce on a project that I took part in, because I was always, any chance I got to take on a project, I said yes. There was never a no, because even if I wasn't aware or able to piece it together right now, it's the only way I could learn to do this in the future. So I started making these videos, and I guess the videos are well liked, and I can continue doing that, but I don't treat it as a task that is in my day-to-day schedule. It's something that kind of happens organically, and so if there's like a period of time now over the last like few months, it's been very quiet on my end because it's like there's like snow outside up in here in Canada. It's kind of a seasonal business, right? So I focus on a lot of R&D in this time of year, and then as soon as the spring is out and we can go out there and start flying, collecting data, then you'll see a lot more content of that field work aspect of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're being very modest, Ted. I think your content that you put out, it's interesting to hear kind of what got you interested in some of this. Was there like a mentor or someone that you had kind of followed that was doing something similar, or was doing something that you were kind of like, oh man, that's like, I feel like there's, at least in my story, and I know Brian and Jarvis is like, there's usually someone that's always kind of like mentored you along the way. But I mean, was this kind of just a lone hobby that turned into something more, or like, was there someone that you were kind of encouraged by kind of along the way as you were diving into this stuff more?
I think no, I didn't have a mentor per se. I was encouraged by the trajectory that I saw in the business case of drones. I realized that we'd kind of hit a time in the technology tree that meant that this was feasible at a scale. And when I say scale, I mean like one person operation, which is what it is for me today as well. I really like to be as sort of flexible as possible, but there wasn't a mentor because I didn't have access to a community or anything nearby where that could have kind of have happened organically. That being said, I mean, that's definitely the best way to learn. If I was to redo it, I would seek out a mentor right away. And there's so many of them in the industry. And the one thing about this industry and GIS and like all this geospatial stuff is like everyone is very, very willing to share and to help. There's really no like secrets that are kept close to the chest. Because at the end of the day, and I think this is how I think about it, is really if I'm putting out stuff and my effort is contributing to the overall growth of the industry by maybe an end user seeing what's possible and then having the ideas start to flow, and then maybe they reach out to a service provider and ask to give this a try, then that's great. That kind of raises the entire industry up, and that will mean more work for me down the line. It may not be immediate, but there's nothing wrong with bringing that tide up and having everybody benefit from it. And then the nice thing is that through all of that, the word gets out there, your name starts to grow in terms of sort of a brand, and that's kind of what happens to me as well. So there's a lot of room for growth, but ultimately having a mentor, I think would have made a huge impact. Probably got me up and running a lot faster. But on the other hand, I think I learned a lot of technical stuff because I didn't have a mentor and I kind of just had to figure it out. And this was before there was much literature online. Shortly after I started, I actually found Drone Deploy, and if there was one source of like information, it would always be like the support docs, either the Drone Deploy support docs. I know there's like a lot of really good general information in these types of documents on these support sites. 4D documentation was also instrumental. And that kind of gives you the textbook version of what you would classically expect in an industry.
Yeah, don't sleep on the support docs. I feel like you could nerd out on those and go pretty deep into some of that stuff. Well, let's get into really the two topics that we kind of wanted to touch on with you was just this anatomy of virality. What a segment name here. But yeah, I think the thing that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, again, being a little humble in your intro here, is just, and I'll even pull some of these things up. I mean, you've exploded in some of these pieces of content that you've done and some of the things that you've really kind of put out on your pages. I mean, I'm scrolling through here, and folks that are just listening, just to context this, we're talking 1,800, engagements, 120 plus comments. I mean, across the board here. And so, yeah, I just think it's interesting. One thing we wanted to kind of camp on, and I'll move down here to kind of some questions, is like, what types of like content did you like prefer to make when you were kind of starting? I guess you kind of alluded to that earlier of like, hey, I was just doing it because, like, why did it interest you on your own? Like, what were there things that, like, were you making these just to kind of memorialize things that you were like finding valuable, or like, did you make it for people that you wanted to share it with? Or I don't know. I mean, we got a lot of things we want to kind of camp out in here because, I just think this is probably how folks come across you, is just like, who is this guy? Like, what is he doing? But obviously the content that you're doing is very engaging, and I think speaks to a lot of folks that are, interested in this topic.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, again, I always say that I make the videos for myself, but why I started making them and the way that I make them, kind of like the structure that I follow, it started with realizing that this is really difficult to get across, like what we do and the type of deliverables and the type of data and the things that can be achieved with photogrammetry and drones and these types of robotics. They're very difficult to explain and encapsulate in just words. And so visuals are mandatory. And so I started making these videos as essentially as clips. And if you look through all my content, you'll go back a couple of years, you'll see that the first set of videos were very, very simple, like screen recordings and me like flying around a 3D model, things like this. And that really caught on. And I think it's because, again, it's like very visual. Video is king. Like, there's my suggestion to anyone that wants to like grow their network on a platform like LinkedIn specifically, is to just forget any like text and photo posts. Don't even bother with them. Make sure you're making a video for your post, because the LinkedIn algorithm absolutely loves videos, and it does track how long people are on that screen quite well. And so if you notice, my videos are always about 2 minutes long. they always start off with like a very like visual, overview of what you're about to see. They go into some detail, so that there's stuff that you need to hang around for and watch to the very end. It just keeps sort of like giving you little nuggets, and there's always like a very long text block above it. And this kind of is the formula that I find works best on LinkedIn, is that you're grabbing someone's attention with nice visuals in the video. They're sticking around, they're watching the whole 2 minutes. Like, you're already banked that 2 minute time on screen on that user. And then they're interested in it, obviously, because they stayed for a while. And then they're going to see that there's a lot of text explaining the video. So they're going to scroll up on that main screen and read through that text. And they're probably on there for another like 5 minutes. All of that is like brownie points for the algorithm. And so I kind of stumbled into this just because I was using video as a visualization tool. But I've, really up until today, you kind of see the evolution where I just focus more and more on video, and in sort of improving the production of the video. Now, that part I do for myself because I just enjoy the editing process.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like,
yeah.
Exactly, but I would not enjoy it if I was doing like long form YouTube style videos, which is like one thing that I've considered many times, but I really don't see a point in it, because the amount of effort that it takes to edit that style and the amount of just shooting and B-roll, and like some of the YouTube videos nowadays are absolutely exceptional. Like that Mavic or Matrice, sorry DJ, the Matrice 4 video that you saw there. This one I went all out on, kind of like YouTube style, right? Yeah. I made like a jig to keep the Insta360 Go camera out in front. That took like weeks, and then like all the time out there flying. I had so many shots like this that I had to throw out. That level of effort for like a 2 minute and 50-second video is pretty crazy. And if I think about like expanding that out to like YouTube style, like some of the guys in the industry, like Dylan Gorman, for example, does exceptional YouTube videos, exceptionally great at the production aspect of it as well. But like, man, I can just imagine that takes a long time to put together. It's almost a full-time job, and I still have all the drone services and the consulting stuff to do on the side. So I find that this formula works well for me, and I'll probably stick to it.
Yeah, I know Brian, from one viral to another, Brian's put some content out there. Yeah, just, I think you said it, like FPV content, just first person, like, hey, here's what it looks like if you were standing out in the field with me. Brian, any thoughts to some of the stuff? Honestly, I feel like you two individuals are probably the two I learned from the most, of just what content sticks, how you kind of create it. But yeah, Brian, anything you want to add in?
No, the only thing I'm going to say there is, like, I think creativity or content by a committee is always going to be worse than an individual, because it's just coming straight from the heart and what you're interested in. You're not sitting there writing a crazy campaign brief on how we're going to do this. You're just like, what would I need to know, and what did I learn on this process, and just showing you exactly what it is. Because the reality of it is, I think your competition isn't other drone providers. Your competition is viral TikToks about, people doing random dances, right? So the attention span of the world is what you're up against, and the entire outside of where people spend their time is your competition. So adjust to that. Don't be like, oh, other B2B companies are doing videos this way, we should copy that. Like, just do whatever you feel is natural.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Brian, you just hit on the user generated content idea, right? This is, I think, over the last few years has grown a lot and gotten a lot of traction in the marketing industry. And that's this concept that you're letting users, your customers, kind of create the marketing material for you. And I kind of, that's the role that I play within these brands, is that I will, take that upon me, do it from my perspective, which is usually better aligned with end users than a corporate perspective can be, because there's just so much noise that's steering that ship, right? And then you kind of miss the point, you miss the plot, and then viewers can like instantly pick up on this. Like we've been conditioned to absorb online videos and YouTube content for a while now, and like we've been trained to kind of spot like, ooh, that's a sponsored post because that guy's like way too optimistic about this product, so it's like the best thing he ever saw. it's keeping it like real, but also, you know, having the creative side of it just not be influenced by too many people, which is one of the things that I have to bring up a lot now. One thing that's happened throughout this is, you know, companies and device manufacturers will reach out to me and say, hey, can we send you a demo unit? And you know, they kind of start the conversation as like a sponsorship type conversation. I imagine people on YouTube start to have when they're large channels. And like right away, I always tell them like, look, the way I do this is like, if you want to send it to me, send it to me. I'll send it back. No money changes hands. There's no like sponsorship per se. But on the other hand, like you can't tell me anything that needs to be included in this video. Like I'll figure that part out after I use your product. And if I don't find something that like really stands out to me, I'm probably not going to do a video, and I'm just going to send the thing back, because it's just not worth it for me to like really squeeze out content for the sake of making content. I don't want to get into that very slippery slope, which is what happens. It's very, you know, once it really starts to pick up steam, it's a very attractive and lucrative kind of situation to be in, and of course it'll spoil the authenticity of it, and users will instantly pick that up.
It's so funny you say that, because there's like this I don't even know if it's a debate going online right now, where people are saying like, you know, the top 40 under 40 for construction and stuff like that. Like people pay to get on lists, realtors, stuff like that. Like, it's just so funny because I think the people don't realize how authenticity can come through in everything. Like people sniff that out so quick, and like, yeah, you're on this like crazy list or whatever, but most of the time they're paid placements.
But I think it takes to like, even your part of it, Ted. It's like, it's funny just hearing you kind of set some expectations up front. Like those are things that we don't get insight into your inbox, right? Of how you communicate some of those things. And yeah, it's just fascinating. I have a handful of questions more, but I want to give Jarvis the floor too. I know I'm operating the mic here, but yeah, Jarvis, any thoughts you want to add?
Yeah, Ted, first off, it feels like I'm like meeting Michael Jordan for the reality capture space. Like, goodness gracious. But I guess for me, like as you got started in different things, did you see like a specific video or post, or, you know, something about photogrammetry, or something about inspection, something about, you know, facade type things that just kind of had that inflection point of virality that you're like, okay, this is the moment that it's taken off for me? Do you remember that post in your timeline?
There's probably like one that kind of stands out and changed how I do things. I think you're kind of like, Grant, you're in the timeline of when that would have happened. It's around here, and it's specifically like the 3D scans that I was doing with Skydio 3D scan early on. I think that was like a combination of photogrammetry, where you know, people know about photogrammetry, but in the context of mapping most often. And then the autonomy side of the data collection was just so cool and visual. Again, like visual, it has to be like something I can show, and you just like, even if you see it for a split second, you get it. And then the 3D models, like these views that you're seeing here, like that three combo, when I put together the first few videos using this formula, is really when it took off. And this was always sort of supplemented by like a concept that has to do with photogrammetry, on how the user watching this can improve their work, because they're obviously watching it or are interested in it. You know, they have some familiarity with the topic, and they're probably looking to level that up. And so this was kind of like the inflection point for me. And it's only after this that I started doing more with other types of devices, and then different types of scanners and different types of workflows. The video that did the best for me was also a mixture of this with laser scanning. It was a video where I'm laser scanning an exterior of a home. I have like QR April tag targets. It starts off with that. So that video did 1 million impressions just on LinkedIn. And it's absolutely crazy. It's got like 4,000 likes, 4,500. It's right there. But it's also very strange. Like sometimes I think I'll finish an edit. I'll make a video. I spent like weeks, you know, out in the field collecting the data and doing everything, aligning it perfectly. And then I post it, and it's like a, you know, pretty mid performer. And I'm like, well, what happened, LinkedIn? Like, what's going on? And like, you just can't you just can't keep up with it. There's a lot of like little tips and tricks, but ultimately, like, it's just the first like few hours after the post are the most critical, I find. Like, if the post has virality, it's going to appear in those first few hours, and otherwise you can kind of tell the trajectory isn't going to go where that one video, for example, went to 1 million. And I was never expecting that video to do very well at all. I thought it was actually too technical. I thought it was like too many things in one piece. But I mean, it's really tough to judge from my perspective. It's more so what the current sort of hype cycle might be in the industry as well, because I find that videos that are related to recent events tends to do a lot better as well. And but LinkedIn is a funny one, because LinkedIn leads to many other types of opportunities. So it's not just purely this. And typically I go through like cycles of like not too busy so I can make more videos, and then like I make videos, the videos turn into actual like paid work, like on the consulting side, which we'll talk about, and then like you won't see videos for a while because I'm busy, with the repercussions of those videos. But it's all good, and I highly recommend everyone to kind of do the same thing. Like, if you're doing cool, interesting work, you may kind of be desensitized to it. I certainly was. Like, I didn't think it was that cool after a little while, but like, please just make a video. Just like make a quick and dirty little screen capture, or maybe just like a quick iPhone. I use iPhone for all my field video collection, and just put it up there, because you'd be really, really surprised, I think, with the amount of traction you'll start to get. And if you keep that up, it can pick up some steam.
And you're opening up like a handful of other questions I have. One of them is like, on this job. So if you're just listening, again, another great episode to watch and tune into, because we're playing some videos in the background here. But how like, let's take this house job that we're showing here. Like, how do you go out to shoot this with intention of video as the output, or is this like a project that you got as a part of your business? Like, how did you go to end of like what this video, that one of this higher performing videos is doing?
Yeah, they're all of the videos and all of the scenes and areas that I shoot are generally ongoing projects, because access to the stuff to scan is actually quite tricky. If you've never tried before, you can't just like show up and scan a building, obviously. So like having the logistics work out on that end, it generally is tied to a project. The nice thing is, like, the types of projects that we do in the commercial drone world, like, generally they're not sensitive. There isn't much that's not available on publicly. Like, it's a bridge or a building, you just walk by it. So I don't even like I don't even tell like the client or the owner in that case that like, hey, this is what I do, and I'm probably gonna do a video out of this. And that's never backfired. In fact, like, when they do see the video, if they come across it, like I only hear good things from that sort of approach, which is like one of those other things in the drone industry. I feel like a lot of people are like, yeah, I do a lot of cool stuff, but it's all under NDA. Well, like, find another thing adjacent to it that you can maybe do outside of the NDA, right? Like, I'm sure not 100% of the work is under NDA, and like, NDAs for this kind of stuff don't always make sense anyways. Like, why are you signing the NDA? It's so important to like. It's so important to like have something to show for the work, especially if you're doing like cutting edge stuff. Now more and more, I do run into that situation, which is a total bummer, because I always just want to have a stock of content and sort of a B-roll from whatever I do that I can pick from later and make a video from it if I want. But it's just part of the game. I think the access to the location to put your idea into a creation like this, a piece of content, that's probably one of the main sticking points for people that haven't done or haven't put a lot of effort into this yet. It's probably something that they're considering to be quite tricky to navigate.
Go for it, Brian.
Sorry, I was gonna say it's very funny, because I feel like I always randomly ask this question, but I can ask this, right? How old are you? What's your age?
I'm 33.
Yeah, no age limits on this show, Brian.
Yeah. I just want to make sure. I didn't think you were like protected class or anything. I just want to double check. It's funny because whenever I talk to people about like reality capture, like even drones, like it always stems from like an interest early on in like videography or photography. And I feel like right around this age group, it always comes back to like skateboarding videos, like the Rodney Mullen early content creation days, or like
Ted, welcome
and
to
like
the craziness that we talk about here. We're talking about skateboarding
No,
videos.
I'm
like
vibing with it. I like it.
how far back does this concept of like wanting to be creative in some sort of other medium? How far does that go back?
For me, really far back, like since like I grew up. I mean, I think the age thing is also interesting for another reason. Like the time of like computers and like them really becoming standard in the house, and everybody sort of getting in on using a computer in the days where the timeline where I grew up in the sort of I'm a 91, so like late 90s, early 2000s. That's like the Napster, the peer-to-peer stuff. Like I was just good at computers by default because I had to figure stuff out back in the day. Like there wasn't like a chat GPT you could reference. You just had to like go and figure it out. It's like that part of it, which kind of is where all my interest in like data and the 3D world comes from. All the gaming that I did throughout my life, I was always like in the video game thinking about the map. Like how do they model that? Like, can I go through here? And then the other side of it, I was always a huge fan of photography. And it's interesting, like you bring that up, Brian, because it's very, very common to hear that people that kind of just jumped into this, usually they come from a sort of previous, hobby or passion in something related to cameras, and which is generally why they succeed, because it starts with taking good images. And being creative is part of it. You kind of have to suppress it a little bit when you're doing the 3D captures, but it goes hand in hand, and it kind of like leads to doing things that are more complex and introducing the different types of technology and sensors into the mix. But yeah, I mean, I think the 90s were a good time for us reality capture folks.
I just wish I could go back and see Brian recording skateboard videos on his like original GoPro and like running over it.
GoPro, I'm talking Panasonic hand, like
Brian, you're the youngest of all of us here. We all know it, so it's we'll put you on that category.
I still remember like the shift of computers moving, but yes, like I was very young when I was on a computer.
Right.
Ted, I got one more question, then we're going to move to our last segment here. Is one thing I think is kind of the sleeper here that often doesn't get talked about is how responsive you are in the comments. And I know that's a part of the like algorithm and things like that, but honestly, just how it builds your credibility. I've seen so many LinkedIn posts of folks that they'll just post and leave the comments to where they are, and people will be asking questions, like wanting to engage, and just like not feeling that like vulnerability or freedom to talk about anything down there, because it's like, I don't want to like look silly or say something wrong. And man, like every comment that I feel like on posts I've seen of yours, it's like met with, when there's a question, you got an answer or reply, and like deep in threads, not just like one or two things. Like talk about how that has that like opened up new ideas for you, or like what is the comment thread kind of shown you as some of these things have gone off, not just in the likes and engagements, but like the comments and reposts?
Yeah, the comments are my favorite part. And I also notice when, someone makes a great post and I see like a lot of potential in it, like, this is definitely going to pick up some steam, but then they like stop responding to the comments. For me, like that's the community aspect of it, right? It's a small community. Like the drone and reality capture world is relatively quite tight knit, and everybody knows each other. And the way that I got to know everybody was from the comment section on my posts and other people's posts. And generally, it's really great questions, or maybe something that I can input. But I'm also in a unique situation where I don't have to, I don't represent any other country other than my own, so I can kind of be very free to respond in whatever manner I want. Like if I want to be a little spicy and then say something provocative there, I'll do it. And I usually get all the like emojis come flying after. The thing is that's where like the actual community lives, is in the comments. And if you're ignoring that, you're not only you're doing your yourself a disservice because the engagement of the post isn't going to grow as quickly. But you're also not sort of getting out there and hearing what people are asking and what their actual, the secondary thoughts are after they saw your piece. That always turns into like a DM, and then, I take that thread further. And again, it's never like there's anything to sell. That's the other huge bonus, is that I don't have to worry about, pushing some sort of agenda or incentive into the thread, because I'm not selling anything. I really trying to stay away from all the selling that's possible. So if you are on LinkedIn and if you're making posts or if you're doing anything, like, please just respond to the comments. It's such a huge portion of the algorithm as well. Like, as soon as the comments start to grow in number and also relevance, because believe it or not, LinkedIn, they have access to large language models. They can kind of figure out what the conversation is about and see what is it positive, is it negative, is it something people would find interesting, and through that it'll start to seed that post into other timelines. Do it like you have to.
Yeah, well, it's so fascinating, like how the comment thread becomes like the open forum board. And yeah, I mean, when you talk about like support articles and pages like we were mentioning before, how that honestly, like, you get your questions answered there, and it's like other people's questions, things that you maybe didn't know about, answers that you were curious to know too. And yeah, just that public forum space just becomes so honestly almost more valuable than the video itself, because you're riffing ideas off each other and really thinking through like, hey, what else kind of comes to mind. But that's awesome. I want to go to kind of our last topic here that we're going to run down, is just, yeah, what's consultant life like? It's funny, last week we had this big tournament bracket of 32 topics under this kind of idea technology. And one of the opening round brackets was, in-house innovation teams versus consultants. And, our background, Brian, myself, and Jarvis all come from, corporations where we had innovation teams and worked with consultants probably here and there, but we just kind of wanted to camp on this idea of, what has that been like? And we have a few questions. Brian, I'll kind of let you dive into some of these questions that we're going to top into. But yeah, just curious to hear a little bit more about now that you know about the public TED, what's the like private TED of the things that you do to ultimately earn your keep and your kind of livelihood. So Brian, I'll kind of kick it to you to kick off this kind of topic.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to set the stage of like, do you notice a trend on like a specific ICP of company, right? So is it like mid-market, under 200 employees? Is it under 50 million ARR? Like, is there some sort of like wheelhouse of company or customers that tend to come to you that consultant seems to make more viable sense to them, or is it kind of a mixed bag?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's kind of like two general categories of the companies that come to me for my consultation and my sort of expertise. Like, remember, we're talking about like how there's really nothing to sell, but what I'm actually selling is my expertise, my ability to like know how to get stuff done. And so the two sort of brackets that have a need for that are either like the OEMs, the drone manufacturers, where they have something very specific that they're trying to figure out what the best route to take is, or sort of get a, more than just like a customer story, but get some like hands-on and product direction essentially, or testing and validation. And then the other hand is like end users of drones and reality capture equipment, where they see what I'm creating and sort of the data products that I work with, and they want to bring that into their business, replicate that, do it for themselves with their own projects. But it's overwhelming to just dive in, and that works really well where I can come in for a shorter period of time, and essentially it's like a training or a ramping up. I find that like a lot of these companies, the larger they are, the more they benefit from the consultant angle, because it's as soon as the company starts to become a big ship, it's difficult to steer, and you may have inputs internally, product managers, things like that may not have like direct experience with the actual the use case. They may have never done the field work before, which is quite common. And they may have an idea based on what they're hearing from their existing customers on what needs to what needs to be in this next product. In both cases, it's always nice to like be able to like get in and out. Like one thing I've realized throughout the consulting experiences I've had is that I generally it's reinforced the idea that I don't want to work for a larger company. Because I personally I would get really bored. Like I hop around a lot of different topics all the time, so I like that flexibility. But second of all, like I don't want to be part of that like system of the cogs and the wheels, and like being you know part of a larger team is not always going to be the most effective way to like move through this industry, especially with where the industry is at right now. Like everyone's just still figuring things out. We feel like a lot of things have been fully developed and completed, and like things like mapping are just like no brain button right now, and you just tap a button on your screen and the drone goes and does it. But it's like the leading edge stuff is really where you need to be flexible. So I really like working with the larger companies, but I also really like working on one-on-one with smaller teams when it comes to that training and sort of mentorship, like which I'd had essentially in the past.
Got it. Got it. So it sounds like it's very like project specific. It's, hey, we need to do this specific windmill at scale. Like it's in a very remote area. Maybe we don't have X, Y, Z. Like, can you come in and your SEAL team one coming in and just like completing your mission, handling what you need, getting them the results that they are expecting, setting expectations, then getting out.
Yeah. Like I'll give you an example. For example, with Skydio, like over a year and a half ago, we started talking about X10. What back then wasn't really marketed yet as X10. It was still in development, and I was shown the product, and I was asked if I was interested in sort of performing an evaluation of it once it was available, and so I happily agreed. I was super excited to do that, but when it came time to actually start that evaluation process, we realized that some of the technology wasn't ready yet. Like it's pretty complicated vehicle, and specifically what I was tasked with evaluating was like the accuracy of the RTK attachments, which have been announced alongside the drone. But after I got my hands on it and started flying with it and saw the data, I said like this isn't really ready. There's a few glaring things that we can fix and tighten this up. And that turned from like a marketing style evaluation and like Ted's thoughts type thing into like, hey, now I'm working directly with their systems engineering, and I'm going there on site multiple times and sort of working side by side with the engineers on these development boards and getting it to the stage where it is today. And like just recently I got back from California from a trip to Skydio, and I was actually there to actually do that evaluation. I drove around California with the X10 and did a whole bunch of mapping and 3D scans around around the state. And like these things start off one way, but they oftentimes kind of venture into something completely different. I think the key is to like just be flexible and have like a wide breadth of knowledge, which again is like one of those things you can't really prepare for. You just have to experience these edge cases and be able to string them together into something that's like a solution. But then on the other hand, I'll have like a 2-day training for reality capture for like a police department, and that's very much again like project based, but like very structured, and like we go in after 2 days, it's all done, wrapped up, and I don't essentially need to be there. So the thing about the consultancy is like you have to be good at like compartmentalizing these things, because a lot of it can bleed into something else, and it can be quite difficult to stay productive if you're not careful.
Yeah, scope creep definitely sounds like a big risk, and I think Jarvis, I would like to get your take on this, but I think it's easier, and something you said even about the way you post content or how you can react in comments is you have this autonomy to be completely honest. And I think very often it's very difficult when you're inside the organization to call the baby ugly. And just having those difficult conversations, because you may offend someone that you work with in a different department constantly. Whereas you can say, hey, it's just not ready, and I'm going to tell you it's not like a personal thing. It's you are bringing me in for me to tell you my opinion, so it's more accepted as opposed to like some unsolicited advice. But yeah, I mean, Jarvis, if there's anything you think specifically about like any take on that, I think specifically on the internal tech teams, it's like is anybody from the tech team auditing your own tech team? You know, are you auditing yourself? What are your OKRs? What are your benchmarks to say that this is a successful program? But yeah, anything there, Jarvis, you want to add?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Ted kind of hit it on the head there. You know, the smaller teams are usually the most agile and the least egocentric, like ego-centered. You know, they're the most willing to say, all right, we got to scrap what we just did and rebuild. You know, Ted's story about going to Skydio and giving them some feedback and then being able to pivot very quickly. It's usually the larger orgs that have committees on committees on committees and teams and teams and teams that take things the most personally. So that's actually a really cool thought. I'd, you know, from the website and from your Horizons talk and stuff, like I thought a lot of your work was focused more on the consumer side. So that's really cool to see you're on like the product development, product feedback, making the equipment, the hardware as best as it can be. I guess my question I've got is like, what's been your favorite piece of hardware and feedback that you've given that's been implemented?
Oh, yeah. There's a few that I come up like right off top of the mind, but I wanted to just to add on what we were saying just a moment ago regarding like that being that third party. Like the biggest X factor is that, just like Brian said, I can come in, I can say, oh, now this thing sucks. Like it sucks. You need to make it better. Here's how I think you should make it better. Because here's why end users are going to think it sucks, and then bounce, right? And like that, just like that dichotomy is really beneficial for that company as well, because regardless of what you think, like I am going to get more impressions like on the decision makers within the company when I say something like that than someone that's been at the company and maybe has been saying it for a while. And it's like I'm able to come in, kind of like observe and hear what the internal people think is should be done, and then like reinforce the ones that I believe are right. And so and that almost always leads to changes, or like changes in priorities. There's a few features in X10, specifically on like the 3D scan and on the mapping functions, that are like specifically things I asked for and like pushed to have on there. And like it's very, very rewarding when I use the thing, even if I'm using it like for commercial work, and to like see that there, and be like, oh, like I totally remember like the process and how this kind of transpired, and finally it's on this latest firmware update. And like these little nuggets are all over the place, especially when you work on the drone technical hardware side of things. Even like small things like UI being arranged in a certain way, and it's really it's really inspiring when I'm in these situations and someone from that company like comes up and asks me and says like, hey Ted, how do you think this should look, like this or like this? Like, is there anything else you would want to see here? And like that is my absolute favorite aspect of working with this. But on the other hand, I also love to see when the end users that are using me to sort of level up their own work start to put out projects that like are very similar to the projects that they approached me with, wanting to learn more about. And I see them sort of like being able to now keep this going and be completely self-sustained, because in a lot of cases, like they had all the pieces there. It's just a matter of taking the right steps to get to the end product. But it's very fulfilling. I absolutely love the consultancy side of it. And again, like the one thing that I still struggle with a lot is just managing my time, because there's just so many different vectors that I have to be on the lookout for when things are coming in, and where to focus my limited time on. And I definitely do not want employees. I'm like 100% certain that I want to be like me, and that's it. And like any sort of internal turmoil is happening within myself and decisions that I'm trying to come up with internally.
Would you consider an AI agent an employee?
Yeah.
I guess maybe. Like, I use ChatGPT religiously. It's always up. I don't know how I could go back to not using it. I don't know if it will ever be something that's like I can like have there and talk to, and if that'll be as useful as we think it will. But I mean, who knows? Things are changing very rapidly. The only thing I do know is that I wish that none of this had happened so I could afford GPUs. Because we need GPUs in this industry. It's like my saw tool for a contractor. Like, I can't get the work done without it oftentimes. And, yeah.
It's interesting to hear your conviction of like, man, I love it. Like, I love the consultancy life. I love like where you've kind of found your, I don't know, like passion and calling and like just your ownership too. Like, yeah, I think the three of us hear so much from folks of like just that on the fence of like, am I where I'm at? Should I move roles? Should I go into tech from, said industry? Should I go back to said industry from tech? Like, it's just fascinating. I don't think it gets celebrated enough of just like appreciating where you're at and continuing to, hone in on skills that you want to improve and continue to add value to, the individuals or teams or organizations that you work with. And I don't know, it's cool to hear because I think that can become infectious to people and also just be encouraging to folks of like, hey, if you are kind of stuck in that middle ground or not really sure where you can add value, like back to your first point you mentioned, just like where are your passions at, like just do a deep dive of your strengths and your passions and where those align and where someone might pay you for those. I think it's just, I don't know, something that I'm encouraged to hear you say because, yeah, oftentimes we talk to so many people that are on the fence, want to move, don't want to stay, don't want to do the hard things. I think to your point of just like, oh, like, I don't, you probably don't love the editing process as much as anyone, but the value and output, that comes from it. And so it's just interesting to, I think, again, hear your perspective and your young age of 33 too. But yeah, just that part I think comes and goes a lot in folks that we get to interact with. And so it's encouraging to hear.
Yeah, young is a big aspect of it too. Like, so if any listeners are out there and like, they're in that like mid-20 stage, don't have kids yet or anything like that, then like, if this is something that you've thought about doing or maybe diving deeper into, and now is the time to do that, because I think there's a period of time like in the 30s, like now where I'm at now, I don't think I could have started this today. Like if I just dropped, my day-to-day gig and just went head first into the drone stuff, because there's just too many other responsibilities that you have to keep up with. And that's when you kind of get stuck in like that circle of like, oh, you kind of just complain about how your company's been doing it wrong internally, but you can't really do much to make that change. And then of course there's always the retired aspect of it. There's like these two groups in the industry I find most often. Is like the young guys and girls, and then like the retired individuals that like have, their career was something completely unrelated, but now they're back to following their passions, and they're doing it on a different level essentially. But yeah, thanks for really kind words. I mean, I go to sleep thinking about drones and data, and wake up sleeping thinking about it, and have through the day thinking about it. It's probably something a little bit wrong with me there, but it seems to be working for me in my day.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I would say we all probably, in our own respective way, think about it too. Oops, I got to bring you back. There we go. Yeah, I agree with it too. And it's just, I don't know. It's just something that, again, I feel like a lot of our listeners may be caught in that kind of mid-career crisis or on the move or things like that. So I don't know. It's helpful and encouraging to hear just when someone does kind of find their passion and it aligns with, the work that they're doing. So, Ted, this has been super fun. Brian, Jarvis, anything you want to add before we let Ted get back to making more viral content, helping educate and bring others into the fold?
No, I think I just thought it was extremely interesting learning more about who you actually serve on your personal company, because that was eye-opening to me too. But it's, I think it's great. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Jarvis, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I want to be included on your next performance review as an employee. Just have you sitting in the yellow chair, just going back and forth with ChatGPT. So how did I perform? And have ChatGPT just ream you.
Awesome.
Grant, can we arrange that?
Hey, I mean, we can head up north. I know Ontario is a little stone's throw away, but Yeah, the fact that you were saying too, it's like, oh, the snow season. It's like, yeah, down in Texas, we don't have that where we just like hibernate. Jarvis maybe a little bit more than. Well, I guess Brian, you two up in the. You guys are all farther north than I am, but
Boston, yeah, cool. We got snow, man.
we got snow. Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, Ted, it's great, man. We are thankful for you. It's cool to hear your story more, and I'm sure. Just as we were thinking about like stuff to talk about, we're like, man, how do we bring out the personal side of you? It's cool to obviously see the stuff that you do out on kind of the public facing side of it on LinkedIn, but it's just cool to hear kind of your story and stuff that goes on behind it. Cause I think oftentimes that's what doesn't get talked about often. And man, you truly are built different. If that's back to the phrase of kind of what we're trying to do around here is elevate folks and stories that are choosing to do things a little bit differently. And it's cool to see and give you space to kind of highlight some of that stuff. So man, we appreciate you. Hopefully we'll have you back to Horizons this year as again one of the premier breakout sessions. We got to give you a bigger stage and more seats in the audience to fill. But yeah, man, we're thankful for you and appreciate your time on here.
Thank you. I'm really thankful for you guys too. I love how you're building this community. It's very organic and it's very special. And then you know how I felt about Horizons this past year too. Absolutely loved it. Like it was a user conference unlike any other, and can't wait for this year, 2025, when you guys announce that. I'm going to be signing up right away. And now I just have to start working on what my topic's going to be, because it's going to be hard to top like 3D Gaussian splats and all that stuff that happened last year. That was kind of a unicorn.
I'll just pick any of those random videos. I'm sure we'll play it in the background. But Ted, it's great, man. We're thankful
social
for
media
you.
masterclass. A social media masterclass.
Yeah, there you go. We
You'd be
could go
surprised
totally
how
off
many
script.
people ask us about that on the GC side. Like,
wow. Yeah.
There we go. Maybe just like how, I think we didn't even get to talk about this, but just like we talk a lot about kind of like awareness, education, and execution kind of being like the customer journey, or just a little bit more of like the life cycle, and how you really blend kind of both the awareness and education. It's like, you should be aware of this, and hey, here's, some kind of educational parts of how to do it. And so, yeah, I think for a lot of folks that tune in are our listeners, just helping them do that within their own respective companies to kind of become better at what, their teammates and projects are aware of what's at their fingertips.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we just came up with your topic, but TBD if that's where we'll land.
Well, yeah, you should have one of your customers on the pod next. His name's Adam Caldwell. He's a really good friend with mine and yours at Maple, but he's doing exactly that. Like, he's essentially taking the marketing, efforts for the company on his hands too, and he's not only just like managing their drone teams and their reality capture crews, but he's also sort of bringing that up internally. And
I'm
so
gonna
like
play
the marketing is
this clip as his intro, and Adam, we're coming for you to have you on here. Yeah, he is awesome. Adam's doing some great stuff. Another Canadian up north. You guys all stick together up there. Yeah.
The Canada.
Great stuff. Ted, we appreciate you, man. Thanks for hopping on with us. Yellow chair and all. We appreciate your time. And man, it's been great. We are thankful and look forward to seeing you come Horizon. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Look forward to seeing you next week, and take care. We'll talk soon.
Bye, guys.